permanently transitioned to doing what we're doing here at St. Paul, and that is offering multiple ways for attending Sunday morning worship, including online as a live stream or some other form of that. Most other churches are doing this as well, so that the scenario is this: we all now have the ability to watch whatever church service we would like to, at our convenience, from any denomination, anywhere in the United States, even from another country. In addition to online worship services, churches are now offering content in other formats. Sermon podcasts are a big thing. Streaming or recording the music that we share in worship. Sharing in Facebook live prayer. Recording weekday messages or teachings from pastors. Creating short videos or reels like Allison is doing with our SOS every week. Most churches also, including ours, continue to offer online ways to gather for prayer and for Bible studies. So church itself, including our worship of God as a church, has become kind of a product to be consumed. We can pick the services we like best, and we can enjoy them at our convenience. So why go? That's the question Neuhoff is asking. And he answers with this: increasingly, I'm convinced there's no point to merely attending. You drive all the way to connect with 3 or 4 songs, hear the message, and then head home. That feels good, right, Wendel? Yeah. All of that you could almost do by yourself in a much more convenient way. He goes on by saying, generations ago, not so long ago, the church was a social and cultural hub as well as a missional hub. In addition to faith reasons, people loved going to church because it was one of a handful of options available in a community, as well as the main way, other than personal devotional life, that you could connect with God. We now, he says, live in a culture that is drowning in options and where we have 24/7 access to any kind of Christian content that our heart could desire. Well, yes, that's all true, Carrie Neuhoff, but I am still convinced that coming together as human beings, as bodies, to sing, to talk, to study and drink coffee and hear live music in the room and receive the sacrament of Holy Communion and to baptize people, all these things are important. Gathering matters. But it's pretty clear from the statistics I just shared that the way that we do church, the way maybe we need to be thinking about church, it's changing. I'm still trying to wrap my own head around this, and I've spent a lifetime on this. We can spend our time, pointing fingers, trying to figure out who and what is responsible for the situation we are in as a church, as a whole. But trying to find somebody to blame doesn't really help us too much in terms of understanding why so many people have abandoned organized religion. Nor does it really help us understand what it exactly means to be the church anymore for this particular time in history or our own particular St. Paul situation, which is what I am interested in. So I'm hoping that first we can gain some clarity and vision about our mission and our ministry here by looking to Paul's letter to the church in Rome. Paul wrote this letter from the city of Corinth and sent it on to Rome around the year 57 AD. And in the letter, Paul is reaching out to a community of Christians who he has never met. He's never visited this church. He's never been in person to worship with the church in Rome. So because he doesn't know the people in Rome and they don't know him, the letter kind of reads as an attempt to address something different from his other letters. Most of his other letters are he's addressing particular challenges that the community is having, or he's answering questions that they have, or he's trying to help them solve some specific problem that they have. But in this one, he is writing to introduce himself to a congregation that he has never met, but to whom he is preparing to meet, because he's getting ready to go to Spain and he's going to go to Rome on the way, as he begins the process of bringing the good news of Jesus Christ westward into Europe. That's his agenda. And so he wants to communicate not only who he is and the theology he is bringing, but that he needs Rome's help with the mission. Maybe he even would like to make the church in Rome his base of operations, which it did end up becoming. Anybody ever heard of the Vatican? Yeah, right? So he succeeded. So he needs for them to not just understand his ministry and his mission, but he wants to get them to join him, with him in carrying out the westward expansion. So Paul has, for some time, been struggling with two seemingly opposing concepts. That's the song that you were talking about a minute ago. Yeah, okay. Righteousness that comes from the law, and righteousness that comes from faith. And as he's writing and recording his thoughts, I think he comes to this sort of profound insight that I am hoping might help us today, just like it maybe helped the people of Rome all those years ago. He writes right after the portion that we heard, well, at the beginning of the portion of scripture we heard Joe read this morning. He writes, "If you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved." For Paul, this is the good news, the very essence of Jesus' message that he wants to take to Europe. This idea, this profound insight that salvation is found through Jesus and through Jesus alone. And he wants them to understand something more. He wants them to understand and begin to grasp that confessing and believing in Jesus and his resurrection is much, much more than just saying the right words. Because for Paul, you're really going to get this. Believing isn't about what we think or we say, it's about what we feel. Now, I say that because at our Acceptance Music Festival last weekend, one of the things that we heard over and over from pretty much every person who presented and spoke was that their purpose in singing, their purpose, their ministry, their reason for offering their gift to the world, be it in a church or a coffee house or a jazz brunch or a bar or wherever, their purpose is to make the audience feel something. And you always say that to me. If you're not feeling something, then I haven't done my job.
Yep.
Feel something. Feel something. Joy, sorrow, anger, disappointment, fear, trust, love, generate some sort of emotional human response. And music, and all art really, does this. It pushes us past what we think inside of our brains and down into what we feel in our hearts and in our souls. So I think Paul is saying something like our musicians tried to say to us. He is saying that confessing and believing in Jesus isn't so much about what we think as it is about what we feel. To claim Jesus as the Lord and Savior of my life is to give my trust and to give my heart to the one who I know has loved me since the moment of creation, right? The one who knows my name, the one who knows the number of hairs on my head, the one who offered me grace even before I left my mother's womb, the one who affirms me as a fully accepted and beloved child of God, the one who invites me to the eternal banquet. And when I am able to really feel that. You see, it's not a thinking thing, it's a feeling thing. Feel that deep down in my heart and in my soul that, yes, I know that God does truly love me. God does accept me. God does intend to save me just exactly as I am. When I can feel myself as created by God for a purpose, feel that I am worthy of God's love and of other people's love, especially, since the world around us keeps telling us the opposite of that. That's the Barbie movie, if you haven't seen it, that we are not worthy of love, that we have to change something in order to deserve love about ourselves, that we are not good enough, or for some, that who we are, what we look like, how we speak, what we think and believe and feel is in fact not worthy of God's love or of anyone's love. Well, if we can get to that experience of truly feeling God's acceptance and love of us, even despite all that the world is saying, then that is a life-changing experience. And that is what Paul is trying to say to the church in Rome. That's what Paul wants to say to all of Europe. I really think that people today, especially after the pandemic, are struggling with uncertainty and with doubt and confusion and gaslighting and not, really able to process what has happened to us and searching for something, right? Searching for something or someone that they can really trust. Looking for something that's real, something that's life-changing, that's not judgmental or threatening, but that actually makes them feel better, feel more alive, something that makes them want to live their life in a way that helps other people in real ways. Right, Aaron? Right. So, gotta just say, Jesus keeps showing up. So after my sermon 2 weeks ago, if you were here, remember I talked about a young man who had been living in his car, beige Altima, in the parking lot in Fort Smith Public Library for over a year. And then last weekend, we were here hearing the challenges brought to the surface through the Acceptance Music Festival, through the music and through the panel and through the conversation. And then Leah Burns' sermon in this sanctuary last Sunday. I have been thinking my brain is going 24/7, nonstop, about what it means to be the church in the world today. God works in mysterious ways, you know. Jesus keeps teaching us, pushing us, forcing us to get outside the limits of our own preconceived notions and knowledge and experience. And so in addition to all this other stuff that I've just named in the past 2 weeks, this week we had our own homeless gentleman spend 2 nights on the front porch of our sanctuary. He first appeared on the camera that surveys the sanctuary door and which is connected to my phone. So if there's anyone moving out there, my phone goes off, right? He first appears on the camera on my phone very early on Tuesday morning, maybe 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And he looked tired, and he was really struggling to find a comfortable position on the cold pavement out there of our front porch while leaning up against one of the columns. But he didn't seem to be harming anything. So I decided to wait until 7:30 and then call Aaron, who I know gets here pretty early, to let him know we had a guest. So when Aaron arrived, he had introduced himself to this gentleman. He brought him inside the church and gave him coffee and some chips and other things that he could scrounge up. He invited him to wash up in the bathroom. Told me this morning, Aaron did, that he went in dirty and dejected looking and feeling, really looking down and out. And when he came back out after cleaning up a little bit, he was transformed just by that small thing. Aaron learned his name is Greg. He learned that Greg has some problems with substance abuse, had been homeless for a while, and he tried to treat Greg with acceptance and with care, and then he sent Greg on his way. Then, on Thursday morning, just as that huge storm was starting to roll through our community and through this neighborhood, my phone starts going off again, alerting me to movement on the sanctuary camera. So I watched Greg out there braving the elements, trying to stay dry under the shelter of our sanctuary porch. And then around daybreak, I watched as he folded back the edge of the black rubber carpet that lies in front of the doors, and he laid down on the concrete, and he pulled the mat entirely over him like a blanket, and he was very still and fell asleep. At 7 o'clock, I texted Aaron, and who was just arriving, and he reports to me, yeah, I saw Greg asleep under the mat when I pulled into the parking lot. And so I got dressed and went to McDonald's to pick up some Egg McMuffins, and then Aaron and I spent about 30 minutes around a table in the fellowship hall sharing a meal and talking to Greg about his situation in greater depth. We learned that Greg has been without a roof over his head for 7 years. He had a car, he said, until a couple of years ago, which he really, really, really misses having. He was happy to live in that car. He was aware of most every resource available in Knox County that is available to help homeless people and folks who are struggling with addiction. We tried to not be judgmental and to treat Greg with dignity and respect him as a 40-something adult, including the choices he has made for his life. We asked him not to use or obtain drugs on our property. We told him we were concerned for his safety, and Aaron said he didn't want to walk up and find him dead on our property. Now, Aaron tells me this was a communication event, that by our words, we communicated, you're not really welcome here. Aaron asked Melissa Cox from Compassion Closet if we could give Greg some clothes, and so we took him back and he picked out some shoes and some shirts and some other things. And as we were finishing up and preparing to send him on the way, we found that the rain had started falling again, and so Aaron offered him the brand new umbrella that he had just bought to keep by the office door at the church. And of everything that we offered, Greg was obviously most grateful for that umbrella, that portable roof over his head. We have not seen him since. So as we begin this series, I just have to tell you, church, that I don't know what to do. I don't know anymore. Everything has changed so much in the past 3 years, I can hardly keep up. And the model that we are following of how to be church, that I was taught, that I have practiced all my life, that I have been encouraging here, of inviting everyone into our building, of connecting with and serving anybody that we possibly can, all of our neighbors, of creating spaces in the church that are welcoming intentionally to all, of trying to spread the love of Jesus in such a way that it helps every person who walks into this building feel God's loving embrace. Maybe it's not the future God envisions. I don't know. I have to be honest. Maybe God is calling all of us who call ourselves disciples of Jesus Christ to something radically different, just like the church in Rome. And that is what we're going to be exploring more deeply in the coming weeks. Not what I ever thought about when this whole topic came up, even if I'd ever thought about this topic to begin with. So let's return to Kerry Newhoff now and his question, why attend church? Because I think that is a question worth considering along with our worship team. If we are going to church primarily to consume content that is offered in worship or study groups or whatever else. You know, we can offer those things online. We learned how to do that during the pandemic. Maybe it would be better for the planet to not be driving all of our cars over here to gather an average of 38 people every week in all of these buildings. My gosh, all of these huge buildings, like office buildings now, right? Same thing. All of these buildings that we've built all over the place to make music and to hear this message, maybe that we want to hear. And when the message or the music stops resonating with what we want to hear, we go find a different building to go to, one that better meets our needs down the street. All these buildings for which we have to raise the funds each year to care for, to heat and to cool and to clean and staff for the people who come here. 30 years ago, when I began my career in the Northern Illinois Conference, if you wanted to start a new church, this is how you did it. You picked a spot where you knew sprawl was going, where the most new houses were going in. Then you got a group of people together, and you raised enough money to buy land and erect a sanctuary and a building. And at that time in Northern Illinois Conference, they required that you purchase a minimum of 20 acres to start a new church in order to accommodate parking everyone's cars. It was the "if we build it, they will come" model that was going in the early 90s. But things have changed over 30 years. Today, if you want to start a new church, what you do is you gather groups of people in homes for at least 2 years in order to create cell groups and relationships and to teach about Jesus. And when you